Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Hutchinson City Council meeting for Tuesday, November 27th, 2018. Approve the council agenda and any agenda additions or corrections.
Mayor, Council, I don't have any additions or corrections at this time.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mary, second by Steve to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Invocation is from Christ the King Lutheran Church. Good evening.
Good evening, good to see you.
Got the band back together again?
Got to be, Pastor Steve, Christ King. Excited to do the invocation for you this one. Let's pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we give you great thanks for this community, for all the freedoms that we enjoy here and the way that we serve each other. We pray for this group of leaders. May they serve all of our residents here in Hutchinson. We ask that you bless their families, bless the work that they do, and we give you thanks and praise for all these things. In Christ Jesus we pray. Amen. God bless you guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Recognition of gifts, donations, and community service to the city. Does anybody have anything tonight? Alrighty.
Well, on one note, the Elks Park, it's not a donation tonight, but my son has played on some of the new stuff. And it's getting very high feedback. So, very nice. So
Can you keep up with them, Cal?
yeah, he's only 4. He's pretty little yet. So,
Where's he out?
yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty. Citizens addressing the council. Morgan?
Evening, Mayor and Council. Hello again. I am here just to make a quick note that today is Giving Tuesday, which is an annual day where nonprofits across the nation ask for gifts during this holiday season towards their year-end goals. And there are a lot of different ways to give. You don't always have to give with money. You can give with time. And one opportunity in our town that's brand new is this Friday, November 30th from 1 to 5 p.m. There's a community blood drive. And I brought the flyer. There are still slots open when I called this afternoon. And it's through the Memorial Blood Drive Centers. And you can call them at 651-332-7164. And you can make an appointment from 1 to 5 at Sen Bank here in Hutchinson. And the whole event is being sponsored by John Sink and Sen Bank. And I know that the first 50 people who donate are getting a bag full of goodies. John and Don Martinez are ambassadors, so am I, and we've been doing our best to tell the community about this new opportunity. So again, it's from 1 to 5 p.m. at Sen Bank here in Hutchinson. And you don't always have to give money. Sometimes a can of food, a nice smile, or even when you're on Amazon, you can go to Amazon Smile and you can pick the Hutchinson Center for the Arts and you can give money to us in those ways. So it's Giving Tuesday, and I hope that all of you give a little bit more. So thanks.
Yeah, and Sen Bank is south on Highway 15 out
Yep.
by
It's next to Goodwill.
Goodwill.
Next
The
to
new
Goodwill.
one, yeah. And that's where people would make appointment through
Yeah, you
them?
make an appointment and you, and they said it only takes about a half an hour to give the blood. I can't give this year, I got a tattoo and they won't let me. So if 2 of you could go do it for me, I would feel really good about that.
Or just
So,
give 2 quarts.
yeah, give a little extra. So I normally give blood every year. It's really easy and you feel better because your whole body regenerates afterwards.
Morgan, give us the number
You
one more
betcha.
time.
The number one more time is 651-332-7164. And just mention that you want to make your donation in Hutchinson. And one really interesting thing about Memorial Blood Drive Centers is almost all of their blood, I think it was like 98%, stays in our region. It isn't sent out like many other blood centers. So it not only stays in the Hutchinson area, but Minnesota in general. So I hope you guys can give some blood, and again, give online too. Thanks.
Thanks. Approval of minutes. We have hearing minutes of November 13th, 2018, the workshop minutes of November 13th, 2018, and the regular meeting minutes of November 13th, 2018.
I just had one correction on the workshop one. On the refuse, that was with the enterprise, and on the refuse budget, it mentions where the increase is being seen because of the $55,000 transfer to the tree mitigation fund, but really it's the increase in the capital outlay budget. Is that correct, Matt?
Correct. So, yeah, we
So
can make
just
that. We'll make
when-
that update. So,
Anything else?
No, other than that, I would make a motion to approve all three with that one correction.
I'll second it. Motion by Steve, second by myself, to approve the minutes with the correction. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Consent agenda, this will be done by one motion unless somebody pulls something off for discussion. A is resolution number 14970, resolution to sell auction for fitted vehicles. B is resolution number 14971, resolution authorizing senior deferral of special assessment. C is renewal of airport agricultural property lease. D is resolution number 14972, resolution establishing location for traffic control devices. Under there we have, one is road closed sign to be placed at Les Scuba Parkway Northwest from the end of the pavement at the parking lot for the wildlife sanctuary to the boat landing located south of Hutchinson Co-op. And 2 is removal of no parking school days 7 till 3, signs on K Street Southwest and from Roberts Road to Leah Street, or Leah Avenue Southwest. And E is claims and appropriation and contract payments, Register A. Anything that anybody wants to hold off?
D?
The whole thing, or just D2?
Yeah, D2, actually.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the balance.
Second.
Motion by Chad, second by Mary to approve the balance. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Steve?
D2 is regards a petition that we received to remove the recently discussed no parking during school days from 7 to 3 on K Street Southwest from Roberts to Leah Avenue Southwest. And I don't have a problem with that at all, since it seemed, overwhelming that that's what those residents wanted. But I have had a few other people comment about the restriction, that they have multiple cars, and I just think we need to think of a way to allow residents to have the ability to park on the street, so we're not penalizing them. We're really, the whole thing is focused more on the student parking, and if it's a hanger on the, like a
On the rear view mirror?
yeah, or a sticker, or whatever, just some way so police officers can know who is allowed to be there and who isn't, if that would be acceptable.
I suppose we'd have to probably look at no parking Unless by, would that be the signs change?
Well, I think it's as simple as a signage change. I think it's more of a Chief Hatton discussion.
And
that needs to
I
occur.
did
It's
ask
an
Chief Hatton
enforcement
about that
discussion.
last time.
Yeah, now you're kind of getting outside the realms of public works in my mind. Well, John and I will put up whatever signs are authorized at the end of the day, but the enforcement action or commitment's going to be the critical piece of reinforcing what's on the signs.
Yeah.
Is there any K Street residents here? You want to
There they
address, you can, would that be acceptable to you?
Can I speak?
Yes, come on and just name and address, please.
My name is Patty Roach. I'm on 444 K Street. I was the one that started a petition for my street because I had conversations with my neighbors about our concerns. One was just be able to park, just us residents. But I'm not sure how much you looked into it when you made this decision because many of those streets have been crowded with cars because of the school construction, and they've been dwindling as the kids are more aware of the parking lot. Now we have probably just seniors parking in our street. I don't know that for sure. I know 2 seniors are on our street, and they will graduate. And then, as I said, the street has been dwindling with parking problems. So, because they're graduating. And the next group, we never had this problem 3 years ago, because everybody parked at the parking lot. So I'm just wondering if we had more time, if it would just resolve itself. And I know some people we're on the 400 block. The 500 block had some kids parking in front of the house, and then they would cut through the yard, and that made them get angry, which would bother me too. But I just wondered if more time could be set for these houses, because yes, I think parking permits is a great possibility, but also we're limited for garage sales. You know, we're a big garage sale neighborhood, and and they're during the school year on a Thursday, so that limits people to park there too. And, a host of other reasons, but we have a lot of people, shift workers who are working and they're switching cars in the driveway. There's a guy who has a trailer, he has to park on the street. These are just people that live on the street. So, and I know we're concerned about the plows can't get through and the garbage guys can't get through, but I think it's going down. I think it's dwindling, and I'm just asking for more time to see. Now, my concern is I saw all the signs, the posts are in, because we made the petition, and ours is the only street that doesn't have it. We have the white flags. So now my neighbors are saying, are they all going to crowd here? And I said, well, they might. They might for a year, they might. But I still think if we bought some time, they just might get it over there and get back into the school parking lot. So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else? Brady? I know that me and Matt fielded a lot of calls from a gentleman on Boulder. I mean, he's been complaining the last, 2 years, 2.5 years? I mean, so, there's no real good solution, but I kind of like Steve's, thought that maybe, with a sticker or placard or something that would let the residents park there.
As long as Dan is okay with that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
I mean,
another
that-
thing
piece of it.
added
Yeah.
to their plate.
Well, and I
you know.
think, we're at that phase of the year where, we can easily have a conversation at our next council meeting and invite the chief here just to get some feedback from, the council. I'm thinking, there's 2 annual holidays every year for garage sales in Hutchinson, and, if that's a concern outside of, the ones noted here, maybe there's options for those weekends that,
No enforcement.
through an action of the council, we do it.
Well,
It becomes a little bit more work for us and staff, but we do it for parades and other things where we
arts in the park.
restrict, where we restrict parking and, where you could potentially, if you want to say, lift the no parking during certain times of the year, those are options there too. But I think it's probably a better conversation to have with those that are going to be enforcing it, which is the police department and the police chief in particular. So,
When I looked at your petition, I was immediately I was a little concerned because I thought, oh, sure, he'll open those streets up and we have now no parking on various other streets. Where will they go? They will go to your street, you know. So it's like,
I would rather have all parking, all free to park than no parking. I'd rather everybody park on my street than I can't park there. My kids can't come and visit during the day. There'd be a lot of college kids that come and go.
But you would be all right if, with this other idea as far as give the residents some kind of marker that they can put in their vehicles to allow them to, that way you'd be able to park.
That's okay.
That that would work for me, I mean, if that's the only option, I mean, that us residents, because I mean, if you have a no parking, by the way, I'm Patrick, I live on 434 King Street, right next to her. And, I mean, there's times where you, I think the no parking, if I can figure out with the police chief or whatever the right way is for us residents to have a few parking passes, so we,
Sure.
to park on the street during the day, because I know there's a pastor that lives on the end of our street. I'm sure he has some church meetings and stuff at his house that allow more cars during the day than during school time. So I mean, so it's just
Well, something to
something to think
discuss.
about. I mean, it's just the reason why we're saying it's easier to maybe park now with a no parking sign versus once they're up, they're usually up for good, and it's hard to remove them. I mean, once 2 years down the road, there's no parking down, nobody's parking our road, and then it's like, well, now we're limited, so.
I think we'll look into it with the chief.
Yeah, I mean, my experience before I moved out to Hutchinson 30 years ago was living by Abbott Northwestern Hospital, and before that, living on 31st in Portland, and we had stickers on our vehicles, although I usually couldn't afford a vehicle back then, so that we could park in front of our houses. And then somebody who parked there got ticketed, and then if the car wasn't moved in a certain amount of time, the car was towed. So.
John?
Ask that if there is a permit, we are not required to pay for that.
Right, there was no charge in Minneapolis. Yeah.
John? you
I just
wanna
wanted to give you an update of where we're at on the project. Obviously, our concern was to get posts in the ground prior to where it's too hard to pound anymore. And we do have a couple along Roberts Road that we're going to be needing to vacuum out because of the amount of utilities in the boulevard. So that is probably going to be taking place on Thursday, Lord willing. It doesn't snow too much between now and then. And then we have two others that were placed but created some sort of a issue with particular properties, so we need to move those couple also. But that was our number one concern. We're expecting that it will take several weeks for us to get the signs in. The ones that are probably the most critical, that we've had the most trouble with, is right on Roberts, east of Allen Street on the south side. We'd probably put those up as soon as we possibly could. That's been the area that has had the most problem with receiving mail services and garbage service. So we have some flexibility as far as that goes as to when everything gets put up, and we'd be willing to work with you in whatever way in that regard. It's easier to pull one out than to put one in, so, all right, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Have it on the agenda again.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously have an action here, you can table it, or you can act on that, but then I would schedule for a discussion, hopefully at our next meeting, depending on the chief's schedule, to discuss enforcement and options for around the school area.
Well, let's table it at this point then. That way it's not, there's no signs up there yet, so you're still able to park on there. But then, right?
Yeah, if that's the desire of the council. I think obviously staff knows we're not gonna start putting signs in if there's a possibility that we're gonna put no, which still then leaves the option open for the residents to park on that until there's a, formal decision made, so. But we should have an action to table it if that's.
Motion to table it.
I'll second that.
Motion by Steve, second by Chad to
Is there,
table it.
is there to a certain time? I mean, I'm just thinking for the residents, if they want to know what the council's gonna act. I'm assuming next time we'll have a discussion on it strictly, so.
I think we can make a decision after next meeting, couldn't we?
Yeah, that would be the plan. We could
would
always
think so.
table it again if we have to, but,
So table it until the 11th.
You want to table it till December 11th?
right.
Okay.
I'll amend my motion for that.
Motion by Steve, second by Chad to table it till the 11th of December. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you for coming.
Yep, thank you. Claims and appropriation, contract payments, Register B. I have a check there for my business, so I'll be abstaining.
Make a motion to approve it?
I'll second.
Motion by Chad, second by Mary, with me abstaining. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Yeah, we've got 5 minutes. So we'll go down to item 10. So.
Yeah. Airport hangar rental policy update. John? John?
You're
John?
on.
You're on.
You're on.
John, rental, hangar rental. See, I tried to get you before you sat down.
Thank you. The hangar rental we have a project right now under construction to add 8 additional T-hangars to the airport. And the Airport Commission has been working very hard to try to figure out, who we have, what we're going to be expecting for fruit basket upset when these become available sometime in the spring. And so that has led to looking at the airport hangar rental policy and also the agreement part of it. And this is some of the changes that basically that were recommended by the Airport Commission at last meeting and for bringing here to the council. I know I did get one email back from council member with some questions or maybe some clarification pieces that certainly I can look at and answer more fully. Maybe even if it's the desire of the council to bring it back and look at it with the Airport Commission, some of those issues. Otherwise, I think for the most part, the main changes related to the sale of an aircraft and the transfer of a hangar. When there's a transfer of ownership of the airplane, can there be a transfer of occupancy of the hangar? Was probably the biggest question that we dealt with. The other question related to accessibility. There are 2 hangars that are designated as accessible hangars. So if there were somebody that came to the airport that had those specific needs, we needed to have a way of taking care of the guy who was already in that hangar, providing other hangar space to them, and then allowing somebody with those particular needs to utilize that accessible hangar. And then finally was the idea of, what do we do about large aircraft? Because the hangar that is being constructed has wider doors and taller tail clearance than some of the other hangars that we have out there. So there are particular aircraft that could fit in a larger hangar that may not necessarily fit in any of our other hangars. Well, there again, if there is a need like that, the Airport Commission wanted to recognize that and to have a way of saying, if we provide you with equivalent space, or something like that, we could get a larger aircraft in the hangar that can accommodate that aircraft. So, and we do have a couple of larger aircraft at this point. The biggest private one we have is in a private hangar at this point, but it's a twin-engine, pretty nice-sized airplane, and so and there's one other that can squeeze in by the hair of his chinny chin chin on either side of the existing hangar that is also a twin. Got a couple of those situations, so it would make sense that we would offer larger hangars to those with larger aircraft. So those were the biggest issues that the Airport Commission wrestled with.
John, you should maybe talk about the sonority. That's kind of the
Correct.
deal, that maybe explain that.
Sure,
Because we
sure.
have open side hangars and up.
Yes,
So
right.
actually that's one of the bigger things that they were talking about.
Correct. There, we do have enclosed hangars, but we also have 10 open-sided hangars, basically like a carport, if you will. Basically just a roof over the top. So we do have some of those. And right now, the way we do our seniority is, and the pecking order, if you want to call it, is the longest relationship, lease relationship, rental relationship that we have with somebody. If they've been on the field for 15 years, 20 years, whatever, they would have first dibs at an available hangar. And then it kind of goes down by date. We do that same thing with the waiting list. So if you called me in 2015 and you're on the waiting list and somebody else calls me on 2017 is on the waiting list, I'm going to offer it first to the first guy. That is just a way of us prioritizing. And then so when we would get into a situation like that for an accessible hangar, a large aircraft hangar, we would need to have some way of prioritizing, what are we going to do with that particular hangar, so that's the priority system we use is the date, and that date is most often dictated by when they had the first rental of either of the kinds of hangars with us.
So that's part of the problem when we're gonna get the new hangars.
Yeah.
People will wanna move up into a bigger hangar, so.
Yeah, when we built the hangar, that hangar 4, this is the issue that we wrestled with the most, and so that's painful enough and recent enough that we wanted to be a little bit ahead of that game coming into the spring when we anticipate being able to occupy the other hangar. So.
Well, I was the one who sent John some questions. Surprise, surprise. But it wasn't really anything against this. Just there were some questions on clarification a little bit. It seemed like a couple places there was repeating language.
Yes.
And there was one area where the new renter has to start paying rent within a 2-week period or something, but then in another place, the new renter, there isn't that language. So it just seemed like, maybe a few things could be added, looked at. And
Yeah, and certainly if that's the council's pleasure, I'd be happy to do that with them. I think considering that we had originally thought that we would be building the hangar this month, and have since found out that there's some delays in the delivery of the materials. It does buy us a little bit of time, so we could conceivably go back, meet with them in December, come back, and we'd probably bring both this and the agreement together at that point, because that was the next document on the agenda would be to incorporate changes into the agreement.
so that would work time-wise?
Yeah,
with
I think it
everybody?
would. That's certainly fine.
Since, well, they just wanted to have it in place when the new hangars come available.
Correct. Yeah,
Those-
and for sure, deal with those three big questions that we were wrestling with, so. And Mr. Sabora, he's already beat me over the head with the agreement language, so I think we're getting very close there. So. No, thank you for your help. Appreciate it.
So that would be stuff like rent and,
Rental rates, and that's another thing that the Airport Commission has asked us as staff to kind of get some information and some more clarification on rates as well, so.
well, if it's not a hang-up, just make a motion to table this till
It's fine with me.
you are ready to bring it back. How's that?
Mhm.
Motion by Steve,
I'll second.
second by Mary to table it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thanks, John. Public hearing, clarification of emerald ash borer as a public nuisance in the city of Hutchinson.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question, or maybe with John before you get rolling too far into this?
Mhm.
You know, as I read this more and thought about it, you know, I know we're doing it because based on the current policy and emerald ash borer has been found in an adjoining county,
Mhm.
which is part of, one of the trigger.
Right.
But the distance away from this event is basically even a little farther away than current event in Eden Prairie, which is in a non-adjoining county. So my question is the adjoining county trigger really what we want to have, and would a distance, you know, around the city be more appropriate, more effective? Because there's a lot of stuff that we could have to start doing.
Right. I can tell you kind of what the concept behind the reason for the adjoining county. This goes back to probably the 2009-10 timeframe, and starts with you know, initially when emerald ash borer was discovered in Minnesota along the river, and then also in St. Paul. And the reaction, the Minnesota Department of Ag at that time, the concept was to put any county where they've got a verified infestation in a quarantine so that no wood could go out of that county. Mm-hmm. And that's where the recommendation came from. Once it's in an adjoining county, the likelihood, you know, there's a quarantine there that's right, because the whole county is quarantined, not just Clearwater at this point, or the little area of general infestation. It's each of those counties that are highlighted. And that was the thinking behind, you know, going with the adjoining county as a triggering activity or action. And doesn't mean we have to put the brakes on all of our proactive measures and you know, and then stop completely and do only reactive measures. I see it as this is a good time for us to really focus on both, to say what do we need to do to be prepared while we're continuing our proactive measures, because the real proof in the pudding is when the critter actually comes. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're trying to avoid. Is this thing even on?
But the bug doesn't care about quarantine areas, or, you know, so, right? I mean,
What's that?
The bug doesn't care
Not
if the
a bit.
county's quarantined.
Yeah, they
so,
don't care what the county is.
yeah.
Is the computer off? Yeah.
And a lot of people who haul firewood don't care about the quarantine area. That's the problem.
Yeah. So that gives you an idea of kind of why we included that originally in the, from, like I said, back in the 9-10 when we first started putting this together, so.
Well, it just seemed, now here we are, and just made me think about it a little bit more, and I did look up, it sounds like the mature emerald ash borer could fly like half a mile once it emerges, so again, we're 45 miles plus away.
Right.
You know,
It's more likely it will be transported here
Transported,
by
yeah,
some sort of
yeah.
whatever, whether it's firewood or other woods, waste.
Yeah, just to speak to Steve, I know Steve and I had talked briefly, you know, Eden Prairie is 47 miles away, and Clearwater is 49 miles away. But there's a county in between Eden Prairie and
Right,
us,
correct,
whereas there's not a county in between
right, and us.
Clearwater
Yeah.
and us. And so
Yeah.
I guess that's I think that's the point Steve's getting at
Yeah.
is, it's one of those things that when you adopt the policy, it makes sense, and then reality comes and you go,
Well, maybe, maybe not. I don't think it's gonna hurt anything to, obviously declare it a nuisance, certainly, or at least consider that tonight. I think that's, but that's the thought process behind the policy and how that got introduced, so. Yep, yeah, they don't need to look at all this monkey business, so. Well, I can begin. The emerald ash borer was first found in Michigan in 2002. So this guy's been around a while. And since that time, the emerald ash borer has infested millions of green ash trees all over the country. There's a very high population of green ash trees as a rule throughout, especially the upper Midwest, because a lot of them were planted 30, 40 years ago when, following the Dutch elm disease outbreak of the 70s and 80s. So there's a lot of them out there. And I've got a picture of him, so if you see this guy, we need to know about him.
Sounds like there's some lookalikes though, too.
Yeah, there are. So that's what he looks like. That's the adult beetle. And emerald ash borer it's non-native. It's a beetle that causes, of course, widespread decline and death in green ash trees. And it's really the larva that does the damage. They get in between and they feed on the tree tissues and disrupt the transport of nutrients and water. And when the infestation is bad enough, the tree will eventually die. As we talked about a little bit ago, in the southeast along the river, you'll see some green circles, and then the big area in the metro area, it was first discovered in Minnesota in 2009, and EAB is spread throughout pretty much the metropolitan area. And the issue that we're dealing with now is that it's up in Wright County. That small green circle up on the top left-hand side of the map is Clearwater. So you can see we have the green circle and and the purple box that's kind of sitting all by itself, that's Eden Prairie. And then, not Eden Prairie, that is, sorry, Prior Lake, thank you. And then, so the box that's closest to us in the big mass is Eden Prairie. So if you look at how far, it's roughly the same distance to Eden Prairie as to Clearwater. If we get into the city ordinance, 9202, and that's the one that talks about trees and abatement of nuisances. Really what tree diseases or trees that are in such a state or condition that they cause a public nuisance, this is the ordinance that we've gone back to and used. If the council were to take action to declare EAB a nuisance, the provisions of this ordinance would apply to infested trees. And in short, the ordinance requires property owners to abate nuisances upon receipt of notice. And if the property owner doesn't, the city may cause the nuisance to be abated. And the city can charge the cost of that abatement back to the property owner. And so those are, pretty standard fare for any kind of nuisance. But that is the city ordinance that we've used for private property owners. With respect to EAB, we would intend to do most of our inspecting in the months of June through August when the beetle is most active. This would be coupled by some leaf-off inspections in the fall and in the spring to look for woodpeckers. Woodpeckers are a very good indicator that you may have an EAB infestation. Once we did identify an infested tree, there'd be an order to remove, at which point we'd offer the property owner 2 options to remove the tree, which should be done in October 1st to March 1st. And then take the tree to creekside, or the second option would be to chemically treat a tree that has more than 50% canopy and do that in the months of May to August. Inspections usually find infestations, from what we're hearing and understand, usually in year 2 or 3 is when they're discovered. So in that case, that chemical treatment would need to be done as soon as possible in that next period of May through August. So, and what we would do is have the property owner inform the city of the service and the product and the method that they used, and any appropriate non-foliar treatment would be acceptable. And no, we don't want any foliar type applications as they're not appropriate in an urban forestry setting.
And John, that's foliar is like a niconoid or whatever that's supposed to be hard on bees.
There's other issues too. Some of the other tree species don't take well to it either. So we don't want anybody to fog that tree. There's injections and there's ground applied chemicals that are available today. You can go get them right at a hardware store or a home center type of a place. So what we would be doing is working with that property owner to say, hey, I want to treat it or I want to take it down.
So John, do you know what is the cost to treat a tree?
I'm going to defer here to Donovan.
For a municipality, it's about $5 or $6 an inch contracted. For a homeowner, you could buy the chemical for $30 or $40 and treat a big tree with it. And almost everything that a homeowner is going to use is going to be a neonicotinoid. But there's a whole, U of M's got a database on ash trees and neonics and bees. And there's little to no interaction between bees and ash trees. That's the issue they wanted to address almost immediately, because it's almost the only viable way to treat these trees is with a neonic. So, and that's
Tom, you should probably tell people who you are.
I'm Donovan, I'm the city arborist. So, but yeah, in terms of treatment, compared to Dutch elm disease, it's significantly easier and quite a bit cheaper. So, and you get 2, sometimes 3 years of residual control, so it's not a yearly treatment.
So tell me this, is that a treatment you could use to prevent that beetle from coming to your ash tree or not?
Yep, as long as the product is in the tree, any eggs laid in there, when the borers would start to feed, it would kill off the borers. So that once the eggs are laid, then they would die once they start to feed. So.
And this is different, this is the beetle and the larva versus Dutch elm was a fungus?
Correct, yes. So it's a little bit easier to control critters than it is fungus.
Fungus,
Yeah.
right.
And that, the fungus was typically transferred through the branches or the roots on the Dutch elm?
Or beetle-borne,
Beetle.
aerial beetle vector.
So the difference between this and many of the other issues we've dealt with in the past is there is a viable and certainly affordable option to treat. So we would definitely want to allow that to take place. Again, we'd want to make sure that it was done using the right materials and the right methods, and work with property owners to address that.
So what you've got up there is
Yeah.
you would suggest working with them and start treating it after a tree was identified as having it?
Correct, yes. If we notify a property owner of an infested tree, then that would kick that order to remove letter in there. And then what we would do is offer those two options. And were they to choose the chemical treatment, we'd want to make sure that we still had more than half the canopy on the tree. It was still alive and doing fairly good. And then we'd want to make sure we got those treatments done as soon as possible within that window of May to August, the next time around, so that we make sure we can manage that tree. The other option, of course, is take it down and dispose.
Well, that ratio was what, 10 to 1? It cost 10 times as much to cut one down as to treat it?
Well,
In that range?
it depends.
Depends on how big it is.
It depends on where, it depends on a lot. In particular, once you get on a piece of private property, it's way different than our situation, in that, it depends on where the tree is, how big it is, how much benefit it's generating for that particular property owner versus the potential.
But fair to say that treatment would be
Considerably
Probably
cheaper.
less expensive for then cutting it down, but that probably won't, last forever either. Tree's eventually going to go, so.
Does it put you in a never-ending cycle of needing to treat your tree then?
Yep.
Yes, yeah, that treatment would need to continue, like you said, every 3 years. You'd have to redo it, so. Basically, for our part, the city has worked really to understand what the threat is and to do what we can do to address it. And from what we've really learned from others who've already dealt with EAB, we've figured out that it's important to provide a public education forum such as this, and then to also engage in regular inspections, to detect EAB as quickly as possible, and then to have strategies in place to deal with it. And really, the goal is to mitigate any disruption of an infestation to the extent we can, and to spread that pain, as if you want to call it that, over as long a period of time as we can. And some of the management issues is, it was 7 years between when it was first found in Michigan and when it showed up in Minnesota. And since this time, we've talked about how close it is to us, as close as Eden Prairie and Clearwater. And then we've identified some reactive type measures that would begin once there were verified infestation in a neighboring county. So in the first 16 years, EAB has, in its 16 years being around, it's traveled extensively throughout the country. And there have been numerous agencies, states, cities, counties, whatever, that have been dealing with this issue all along. And we've learned from them as this new information has come to us. And I have to say that early detection and quarantines in Minnesota has seemed to help a lot. 7 years ago, when we first found EAB down along the river and in St. Paul, the conversation was, well, it'll be statewide within 5 years. And because of some of the proactive measures and reactive measures that the state has taken by quarantining counties and to be aggressive about looking for the bug, I think has really helped slow it down in Minnesota for sure. We've also learned that people are doing things proactively and mixing that with the reactive measures that they include in any kind of management plan. So I don't think the one precludes the other. They're more of a shared issue. So what are the proactive things that we have been doing and will likely continue to do most of these? We want to maintain a tree inventory. We want to have condition ratings on those trees. We want to identify this 800-meter grid to determine sites for chemical treatment, to slow and reduce the amount of pests that there are out there. We want to identify triggering events. We want to initiate removals of ash trees that are in poor or moderate health, and we want to continue the program of forestry diversification. That means reducing ash populations as part of street projects and also selecting ash trees, some even in good health, in areas with high ash populations. One area that we're looking at in particular would be the Linden Park area. We did a project there several years ago, but now we could take it up a notch, particularly considering that there's a construction project over there in that area now, and will be some street projects over the next couple of years. I think we're going to have a good opportunity to really dive into that area and make some good positive changes in the amount of the total ash population. Some of the reactive measure would be to initiate and then continue those chemical treatments at the sites at the 800-meter grid. That puts us at roughly 35 to 40 trees in Hutchinson. So what we're doing now is looking at where they would be. What's been found is that there's when you do this, you actually can reduce the amount of beetles out there by half. So it again slows the spread of the problem. We'll continue to remove ash trees in poor to moderate health, and particularly in those that are in areas of high population percentage-wise. Continue to monitor condition, and we want to remove infested trees during winter months, and then obviously replace those trees as resources permit. So we've identified triggering events as one or both of the following: infestation in an adjoining county or anywhere in McLeod County. And that leads to us having this public hearing to declare the EAB nuisance and initiating some of those reactive measures. And proactive measures may be reduced or cease depending on available resources further down the line.
So John, just to clarify, there hasn't been anything found in Hutchinson
no.
or in McLeod County yet?
Correct. Nothing has been, just in Wright County and in Clearwater, specifically in Wright County.
With it being in Wright County, does that trigger anything McLeod County wide?
McLeod County wide, there isn't anything. I don't know what their policy is. We had worked together with them on a grant to do a county-wide EAB plan.
Sure.
And much of that plan was virtually identical to ours, but I don't know where other communities or the county, if they adopted it or where they're at with that. So.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So John, if they remove infested tree and they take it to Creekside, does that get ground up right away?
Yes. Yeah, well, they're a authorized site, so we could, it would be contained there.
Well-
And it would be chipped to a certain,
That was a
Yeah.
question I had.
Sure.
What is the plan? I mean, obviously, wouldn't we want to address that, grind it up as soon as possible?
Well, that's what I was kind of
Right.
getting at, as soon as they.
the other conversation is leave it there. Leave it where you are and we'll come and grind it.
Grind it, yeah.
That's probably, but if you do that, then you're looking at needing to clean that equipment
Right.
for, every time it gets moved.
John, my understanding, I know I shared this
Yeah.
with Steve, was that if it's found, we're gonna get
Mhm.
quarantined by the state.
Correct.
They're gonna dictate
Correct.
how we go about doing it.
Right. And right now, Creekside would be the only site in McLeod County that would be disposal of infested wood. So that's part of why we also chose it, adjoining county as beginning, because if it gets up into less, say Les Prairie or whatever, that wood's coming here.
Is
You know.
it?
No, it's,
Would it be coming here? I
Or
thought
would it go
that
to
was-
Carver County?
At this point, it would, well, whatever, you know what I mean? If it comes into McLeod County, it's coming here, more than likely, because our county would become quarantined at that point by the state.
But why do we have to take it versus leave it there and we can send our chipper there? instead of bringing it into
That's
the
what
community?
we've talked about that, and part of the conundrum is the cleaning of the equipment.
Yeah,
And not to say that that's not doable, but I think that as we get closer, that's a conversation we want to really have.
well, and
You
that
know.
was another concern is like a
Mhm.
hitchhiker, like other invasive species that might,
Mhm.
have, stay on the equipment, but at the same time, if, say it's in Lester Prairie, then
Mhm.
we're bringing it right into the community.
Correct.
So,
So those are some of the things we, and part of it is where, it's a state on down type of decision. Part of it is. So once the infestation happens, the state gets involved and.
So contaminated trees can't go from one quarantine county to another quarantine county? So it couldn't go to Hennepin County to be disposed of and,
My understanding is that it could.
yeah.
Once you're in that zone, that pink area on the map, you're in the pink area. Yeah. Mhm. So kind of the short term is basically we're going to start, Donovan will be out inspecting, continuing to work on detection and monitoring efforts and training the Public Works and Parks employees to detect infestations. We're going to cooperate with private property owners. In most cases, in many cases, they're the ones who see the infestations first. That's tended to be how it's been found in other areas. And obviously, we'll continue to cooperate with other agencies to detect and monitor, kind of as we have been going along. Our short-term plan would be this fall and winter, a public hearing, then we start surveying publicly owned ash and identifying those of low quality. We want to be aggressive, removal program in parks and pursue boulevard ash removal and replacements. Communicate with property owners if they identify some low quality ash on adjacent boulevards. And then probably one of the biggest things with cost effectiveness in the replacement trees. There's many options. Our program that started in 2014, we've tended to use larger trees that are more expensive for replacement. Maybe we can look at some options and lower that cost to be able to get more trees replaced for the same amount of money. Beginning this summer, we'd identify those 30 to 40 trees in that 800-meter grid and start treating those trees. And then we'd be able to really boil down the time, labor, and materials necessary for that type of treatment. Certainly help property owners identify appropriate chemicals for treating their own trees. And then the biggest part would be the focus of the public education efforts in conjunction with next year being our 40th year as a Tree City USA. During this period of time, like we talked about, we want to really think about how we could do one-to-one replacements, and then try to figure out, based on the cost and those efforts, if there's a time that those replacements would no longer be possible, based on the potential for the mortality of the ash. Most of the ash trees will die off in years 11 through 15. So we do have a little bit of time typically where one-to-one replacements would be probably be able to be done, but there may come a magic time when that would be more difficult towards the end of the 15-year period. So what's the scope of this issue? We got about a little over 2,000 ash trees in town. And we figure there's anywhere between 2,500 to 3,500 ash trees that are privately owned. And there may be stands where that is even more. So it's a pretty big issue. You know,
percentage-wise, what,
15 to 20% of public and private trees, yes, we figure are green ash. So 5,000 to 6,000 trees, that's a lot of trees. And again, that 15 to 20% of the forest around here. So because of that, you know, our goal is to push this out over as long a period as we possibly can. In summary, I think EAB will likely come to Hutchinson. I don't know when. Lord willing, it'll be a long time. But before it comes, we want to do what we can to prevent it, or at least limit its effect. And when it comes, we want to be ready for it. And we want to remove infested trees before they become dangerous. One of the attributes of an ash tree is, you know, stuff falls out of them when they're healthy. You know, when they are in the process of dying, they shed a lot of branches. So there's some concern there. We want to do what we can to prevent or limit the infestation, and our hope is to prolong the life of the ash trees in Hutchinson to the extent we can. And with that, you know, staff recommends that we declare EAB a nuisance, and like I said, hopefully it'll be a long time before we actually have to come and report that we found a bug. But I think this is puts us in a very good spot to be prepared to do what we can between now and then. So,
John, can you put the little bugger back up there?
yeah, there he is.
Is he like an inch long?
About
Or
size of
Donovan?
pinky nail.
Yep, yeah, about,
They're
Yep.
littler than they look in person.
correct. Yep, they're about half an inch.
Half
At
an
the
inch?
most, yeah. Mhm. Like I said, that's partly why they're hard to find, because they're little.
And that's in an adult size? you
Right,
said?
that's the full adult beetle, yeah.
Realistically, you're going on woodpecker surveys.
Yep,
Unless you have binoculars or access to someone's property, you almost have to be up on the tree with a boom truck to see it. So,
And typically, how many? I mean,
per
what do you,
tree.
yeah,
So like on a heavily infested tree, they'll figure out the square meter on a branch, how many square meters are in, say, like a 3-inch branch, and they'll find 300 or 400 different larvae in that 1 square meter. So you could have a 2-foot length of branch with hundreds of little beetles in there, so.
very prolific.
Yeah. And that's hence why you see such huge woodpecker numbers, because there's an endless amount of food for them, so.
And again, it's that inner layer that between the bark and the sapwood, which doesn't lend itself well to inspection, you know, noticing it. So, you know, that's why we want to, really, if you start seeing lots of woodpeckers, you know, will help figure out if that's what it is. So, We've done that already a couple times. We've gone out and, had somebody get up close and personal to see if there was any issues. And like I
Well,
said, so far we haven't seen
This
anything.
has all been good information for all of us, and I think for our citizens, it's excellent
Yeah,
information,
yes.
you know.
Part of what Donovan's tasked with over the winter, probably on the really cold days, he is a glutton for punishment, but I'm thinking on some of the really cold days, he'll be doing quite a bit of work on the city's website, the forestry page, to talk about EAB, to talk about some of the things that we would be, if this goes forward tonight, what we would start planning to do, even this winter and into next year and the following years, so.
What's the easiest way to get a hold of Donovan?
The
Good.
easiest way is probably just call our department phone line, 320-234-4219. That gets you the Public Works Department, and we'll get you in connected with them. He moves pretty quick, so he's hard to pick out sometimes, but we'll get the information and get people connected up, so.
Otherwise, the submit a question feature on the bottom
Correct.
of the forestry page,
Yes.
that's the best way, because that's right to my email direct.
Right.
Anything else? I'll open it up for public comment. Yes, sir. Yeah. Sir, please come forward and name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Bill Baum, and I represent Country Club Estates Homeowners Association. The question I have is, if we contract someone to cut our lawns, pick up our downed trees and so forth, is there going to be a restriction on what they do with those down branches? In other words, they're not necessarily from the city of Hutchinson. They may be from another community. Now, how do we possibly address that kind of an issue?
Yeah, I think, if you've got somebody that's coming from outside of Hutchinson,
Yes.
I would definitely request that if they're coming out of a quarantine county already,
No,
they cannot
it-
transfer it. But if they're not coming from a quarantine county, they can.
Okay.
That being said, I would still request that they would not bring somebody else's over while they're cleaning yours up.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're located in a neighboring county,
Mm-hmm,
which is not included in
right.
the quarantine area.
Correct.
But also, if they take our refuge to their county and say McLeod County is quarantined,
Right,
now, how do we try to protect this from spreading?
Sure.
Okay, so Donovan, maybe you can answer, you can.
yeah.
If you have a branch that falls off of an ash tree,
Mm-hmm,
because it's dead,
mm-hmm.
it still would contain the larvae from.
It
the-
could,
Right,
yeah.
and they could then carry that
Correct.
forward and spread it more. That's what I
Right.
guess I'm looking for.
Correct. So, once there were an infestation, it kind of takes care of itself because the whole county becomes quarantined
Right.
at that point. And then there's no wood that goes outside of
Okay.
that area.
Any wood, and that would include down branches and so.
Correct.
Okay.
Any ash wood can't go anywhere.
No,
It has to stay here.
any wood.
Any wood, right, any wood.
Okay,
Yeah.
now, supposing that someone, and I'm giving you a supposition here,
Mhm.
supposing someone decided that they wanted to make furniture out of this wood,
Mm.
now what do we do?
If it's kiln dried, that's.
That's the issue. There are ways to do that,
Right.
but you'd have to work with the pollution, or the Minnesota Department of Ag and,
But the person can't just go to work and cut down an ash tree.
no.
And
Not
then,
in a
once it's been
quarantine
quarantined, and then
Yeah.
cut down an ash tree and say, I'm gonna make chairs out of this, and
Yeah.
then ship it outside the thing. Is
No.
that correct?
That's correct, yeah,
Thank you.
right. They need to be,
Yes, sir.
Ted Beatty, and I represent Rolling Greens Association and the golf club, which has a lot of ash trees. You mentioned, and I heard, only green ash trees. What about the other species of ash trees?
Typically, it doesn't affect them.
Doesn't affect, so
Right.
black or white, they're all?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, that'll
Yep.
solve my problem.
That was easy.
That helps.
I did look last night, I was doing some research, and they said they still, the other ash are still susceptible, not as much as.
It can be. It can be an issue.
Just so you know.
Right. It's typically not an issue in the other ash species, but it can be. And I think that has to do with the condition of the tree typically. If the tree's on the edge, it's probably time to take it down, so.
So what is the lifespan of an elm tree?
Elm trees, 300 years. There's one on
Okay.
Milwaukee that's probably that old.
And then the ash tree?
80 to 100,
Old,
yeah.
200 years
Yeah.
tops. In an urban environment, 40, 50 years.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a whole different animal, street side, compared even to a backyard, compared to a wood situation.
Correct.
So.
Yeah, we typically look at, on the high end for a boulevard ash tree would be 80 years. That would be a miracle. 50 is probably more likely, 40 is even more likely for those. And much of the trees that are over by the rec center area, for example, they're getting up into the 40-year range of being in the ground. So that gives you an idea of, the level of maturity that much of those ash are.
So Donovan, that old elm tree is between Franklin and Main Street? Yeah, that's a big tree. It's huge.
Any other comments?
Motion to close the public hearing.
A second.
Motion by Steve, second by Chad to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
John, do you know what Wright County is doing, or the city of Clearwater, besides quarantine the county?
The DNR has some local urban forestry guys now. That's actually part of Emerald Ash Borer. Hutch has got one. He'll handle the smaller communities in McLeod County. And then I could get in contact with the guy in Wright County and see what they're doing. But there's a lot of substantial sized towns. I'm sure they've got their urban forestry programs rocking and rolling on this too. So.
I'm just wondering how aggressively Clearwater's, is doing.
Right, I don't think they have an urban forester. They're what, 9 or 10,000, somewhere in that neighborhood, so.
And I would imagine Carver County has some sort of a response plan too
Yeah.
going on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny to quarantine Wright County when Clearwater's basically right on the border of two other counties. And
I'm
they're
sure
not-
they just need an actionable point, and they'll use county boundary lines as that point.
Well, but unfortunately, that gets back to my question.
Right, and distance doesn't work either, because look at Fairmont. They're 200 miles from the nearest infestation, and they've got it.
Yeah.
So it's tough to find that actionable point. So.
Yeah, except now you're gonna be, how much time will you be spending on that and resources versus what you would be normally doing?
It shouldn't be that detrimental to our current urban forestry program. I mean, we should be able to maintain business as usual without too much of a ding in our progress.
So, this is a question. So really the benefit to us by declaring a nuisance now is what?
Mainly familiarize the residents with, they're already familiar with the Elm program, and just to advise them it's gonna be the same thing, so.
Yeah, and with those two options of removal or treatment.
Because I think that's the question in front of the council is, are we ready to declare a nuisance at this point?
Well, and that's where I guess I'm just more comfortable continuing what we're doing, and, maybe there's some other funds that could be put towards it to do a little more diversification, removals of some of
The
those.
state is working on bills right now, but they're up in the air. There's a couple of bigger multi-million-dollar bills for aid for communities, so, but then each session they come up and they get shot down, so.
Well,
until-
and that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Local funds, our funds. We've talked about that a couple different times now.
Yeah, we talked about the composting vessels at Creekside and how expensive they are to replace, and do we eliminate that program and ship that waste to Scott County? So theoretically, that frees up some money that might be able to be targeted on this.
At this point, maybe then that's just something that, as that gets flushed out a little bit more, we can look at next year possibly, as far as earmarking some other funds.
So Stefan, is that little guy going to be on the front page?
I like the color.
Well, what's your pleasure? I think, like John said, it's not if it's gonna be here, it's when. And
It'd be a little easier if it was closer.
Well, I'll make a motion to approve the resolution declaring it a public nuisance, because it is, it will be, and I think we need to be proactive and be prepared for it.
And I agree with that, so I'll second it.
motion by John, second by Mary to approve resolution number 14973. Any other discussion on it?
Talked about having an annual report on the forestry, especially with the EAB component of it, and can this then be included? And
We're working on that now. We should have that near year end to come back and talk to you about it.
yeah,
Some
but then,
things that have
so
happened.
next year, then we can
Yeah.
have a section on reactive and
Correct.
too, so.
And I would just add to, I think it'd be wise, at least for you guys, just give us updates on what you're doing. I mean, I think if
Yeah.
we feel like it's going too far in one direction or not far enough, I think that'd be appropriate for some feedback from the council.
Well, that's even where are we really gonna start treating trees now and there's nothing around?
Well-
Especially if you could do it, yeah, so it's things like that, it just.
Sure. When we talked about the treating part, what we're trying to figure out is what it's gonna take.
Yeah, and that's good.
And what the efforts are involved with it, and what our options are for in-ground versus injected versus other. So those are the things we want to work on coming up fairly soon. Not to say we're going to do all 40 trees in that particular, yeah.
I thought
because
that would be good.
Right, because I think the biggest thing is to really start getting a handle on the effort, and then also some of the costs that relate to removal and replacement and treating and things like that, so we can be a little bit, sharpen our pencil and figure out where we're at a little bit better with that fund, so.
I think it would be wise also to really start developing a plan for Creekside.
Yes.
And what
Yes.
we're gonna do with
Andy
that.
and I have talked about it many times, and I know we've had conversations with other folks in the county. And, things are a little bit different now now that we have the different grinder. So, now that we know that we have a neighbor with this, this will motivate us to get our game plan together for what happens when it shows up. So. Exactly.
Donovan, John, maybe it'd be helpful if they reach out like to Clearwater and see actually what their plan is.
We'll do that and report back to you guys.
I think that'd be.
Certainly, I'll probably let Matt know and
Yeah.
what we find, so.
Call a motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Thanks, guys. resolution number 14974, resolution authorizing the city to enter into a joint powers agreement with the state of Minnesota for Roberts Park boat launch construction and maintenance.
The mayor and council did hand out a revised agreement and a copy of the resolution that we forgot to include in the council packet. There was just one minor verbiage within the agreement where it talked about a bullet point F that doesn't exist, and that was just a typo from the basically DNR, and so that's the update to it. You may recall, actually, the interesting part was that I know the council was approached by a resident probably 6 months ago asking why we weren't improving the boat ramp and why, how they had talked to the DNR, and the DNR said it was the city's responsibility, and the city has said it was a DNR responsibility. Well, the truth of the matter is both of our responsibilities, and I think the agreement's in place right here to identify that. And so for us to do any work on that boat ramp, we have to have the okay from the state of Minnesota to do that. And that's what this agreement lays out. It gives us the groundwork to really make those improvements to that boat ramp, and it's the ramp at Roberts Park. I did talk with staff about the one at West River Park, and there could be very well an agreement that comes forward somewhere in the future. Right now, it's not in the condition that they feel like where it needs to be improved. So, but that's, I guess, the basis for this agreement.
Make a motion to approve the resolution.
The agreement. I'll second.
Motion by Chad, second by Steve to approve the agreement and the resolution. Any other discussion on it? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Transportation Alternative Program Funding Application Resolutions. Truck Highway 722 and Montana Street Trail Crossing. We have, under there, we have resolution number 14975, resolution of sponsorship for the Transportation Alternative Program, application for Truck Highway 722 Montana Street pedestrian crossing, and resolution number 14976, resolution agreement to maintain the Truck Highway 722 and Montana Street pedestrian crossing facility in the city of Hutchinson. Kent, is this you?
This is mine, yes, thank you. Quickly, what we're looking at is. Shouldn't touch that, should I?
You almost had him dancing.
Exactly.
Emerald Ash Borer.
They're here. Yeah, this is a Transportation Alternatives Grant application. We're looking at, again, similar to what we did 2 years ago. Montana Street and Highway 7 Trail Crossing. 2 resolutions are required as part of the application. That's what's in front of you this evening. The solicitation for these dollars is out there. These dollars are approximately 5 years out. We're looking at 2022 or 2023. A few years ago, we applied for 2021 dollars. There are some dollars left from last year's solicitation. That's why there's 2022 dollars available. So there's the possibility that we could, deliver the project a year early with 2022 dollars. Then there's also the possibility, and I've been talking with MnDOT staff, that we could do an advanced construction arrangement if we were dedicated these dollars. So that becomes more of a financial decision to be made if we'd want to front end the dollars possibly in even 2019 and then be refunded the dollars in 22 or 23. So there's that possibility.
This goes through Mid-Minnesota Development Commission?
Yes,
Yeah.
and this goes through the regional development commissions, and the application is due shortly after the holidays for the grant, and we should be notified at the April Area Transportation Partnership meeting. I believe there's a good possibility we'll get these dollars. Just talking with the the regional development person and having an understanding who might be applying for the dollars in our district.
So Kent, this is the Hawk system?
Yes, this is the Hawk system. I can throw it up on the screen here quick. Unless you want to continue to look at this guy.
And I think last time we applied for this, we were pretty close to getting it.
Yes, that was a relatively competitive year.
Mm.
Like I said, last year wasn't so much. There's actually dollars left. So yeah, I believe, yeah, there's a likelihood, yeah, we could get those 2022 dollars. Price point wise, it sets up well for what funding is available in 2022. And yeah, I wasn't aware of their willingness to possibly do an advanced construction arrangement prior to a conversation I had probably a few weeks ago with some MnDOT staff. Yeah, this is system, yeah, it's a, if you're wondering what HOC stands for, first and foremost, yeah, here it is, high intensity activated crosswalk, and you pick out an H and an A and a W and a K, you end up with HOC, I guess. So anyways, that's what HOC stands for. It's a signal system, push button activated overhead. It's 3 lights, 2 of them on the top are red, and then the one that's not activated below the 2 red beacons is a yellow light. Yellow flashes to warn the drivers that there's going to be a stop condition. Then the reds pop up. Then that's a stop condition. And then when the reds go away, people move on, obviously. So yeah, it's just red and yellow lights. And then it has the crosswalk indicator similar to any signal system downtown here from a pedestrian standpoint. With all the curb work and the system itself, we're thinking about $170,000. This grant would offset 80% of that, so 135. Yeah, if I do my math. Yeah, maybe not quite right, but anyways, about 40,000 would be the city share. And yeah, there's one of these up in St. Cloud, up on Division. I'm not exactly, maybe some of you are more familiar with that.
By the library?
Yeah, that's right. It's by the library. There's one on Highway 12 that was put in Maple Plain, probably 4 years ago now, give or take. So starting to see more of them.
It's a busy stretch of road, and I have seen numerous people trying to get across, you know, and it made my heart skip a beat when I saw a lady with 2 kids in little strollers trying to get across there and cars zooming by, you know, I mean.
No, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's a proactive measure, and this is a conversation I've had with MnDOT quite a bit. Obviously, this facility is on their state highway. It's proactive in nature. You know, there's not a lot of crossings there or counts there, you know, to justify it per their policy and their guidance. But, you know, it's one of those things, yeah, like you said, we know there's an issue, and we know people utilize it. You know, there's the colored walk that's out there today, you know, similar to School Road intersection and Highway 7. So the crossings are basically in place, and people are inclined to cross there due to the nature of our trail system. We're funneling people to that intersection, you know, from the north of Highway 7 with how our trail system is configured to get them over to the Loose Line Trail and the Gopher Campfire Sanctuary area and such. And yeah, I think it's one of those things, if we're not proactive, you know, we don't want to be reactive. That's what it boils down to, and something serious happens there. So I think MnDOT's bought into that idea. They are indicating that they are supportive of the project, the grant application, albeit you know, they'll have to have a final approval on the ultimate design of the system. But what we've shown them so far, they've been accepting of. And then just by coincidence, and now that MnDOT's not in the room anymore, I can maybe say this, but no, it's purely by coincidence, I received a phone call last week, and MnDOT's looking at, they had an unwillingness for years to put up crosswalk signs, and John's left now, but he's aware of this too, to even sign the crossings that are in the pavement with signage, just to have crosswalk warning signs that we have or that we have even on some state highway crossings, like Maplewood Academy on North 15. That's an uncontrolled crosswalk scenario. That is signed, but they had an unwillingness from the very beginning when Highway 7 was built, in 2007 on the west end there, to sign that. And finally, I just gave up, asking for it after many years. They had a citizen inquiry or complaint. It sounded like it was pretty direct from, I didn't see it, but how it was described. Now they're going to put up trail crossing signs here, more than likely in the near future. So, which is a good thing, but I thought there was a little bit of irony with it.
So you're not quite as powerful as you thought you were?
That's that.
One person can make a difference.
Exactly. In MnDOT's mind, one person can make a difference, and
Maybe you're
it
too
doesn't have to be
nice.
the city engineer, I guess. That makes that difference. So with that, yeah, I'm inclined to go after these dollars again, and I think and we talked a little bit about this 2 years ago, it would be nice if the city could offset the cost of this improvement. I think it's worthwhile, but it's on the state system. I don't think it's necessarily right that we pay for it in its entirety out of our bonding dollars per se. So this is really about the only viable funding source for this type of project. There are some local partnership funding out there, cooperative agreement dollars. We're going to be pursuing those on other fronts, and I'll bring that back to council here in the near future. But this is really the funding source that, shapes up well and fits this type of improvement, albeit, like I said, the dollars can be a little bit out on the horizon, but I think there's a little bit of hope that we could deliver it earlier on.
A motion to approve both.
Second, both.
Motion by Steve, second by Chad to approve both resolutions. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We have the City of Hutchinson Financial Report and Investment Report for October 2018. The Hutchinson Housing and Redevelopment Authority Board Minutes from October 16th, 2018.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Question for Matt, maybe Andy's gone, but you looked at what you're projecting or estimating our general fund balance looks like it could be at the end of the year?
I haven't asked that question, so
Yeah.
I can do that and shoot
Send
an
that out.
email and see what we're estimating that at. I mean, I know right now we're sitting very well,
Yeah,
so it looks
that's
like it's
what I
gonna be in the
looked at.
positive,
Yeah.
so. But I don't wanna take an educated guess, so
Yeah.
I'll ask Candy, so.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
I just noticed a lot of red at the end of the report on our investments. Stock market's down.
Affects the bond prices too.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that it, Steve?
Yes, sorry.
All right. Kent?
Yes, just quickly, pond project underway, going very well. So if you want to get an idea of the magnitude of it, the depth of it, they are down to the bottom on the north edge with the sloping. So
Some people were wondering, how deep is it?
yeah, it's significant. It's no surprise, but
We're hoping to find black gold.
Well, that's what I said. I mean, that's what, we're gonna keep going till we find.
But I think
gold.
you can notice the sloping, how it takes off from that trail on the north edge, and we tried to make that broader than the typical pond, so. When it's done and it's landscaped and everything else, I don't think it'll look as abrupt as it does now. So,
I was thinking maybe some split rail fence at the corners or something to
Yeah.
break it up with the traffic intersections might be nice, you know.
Yeah, I think we'll look at something. We've used split rail fence in other,
Yeah,
trail and slope areas, so.
Yeah.
We'll see how that takes shape. I think we'll put some thought to it. You know, we do have some landscaping and aesthetic, items, features in the plans, but I think there will be a conversation with the Parks Department between Public Works and Parks if we need to do anything else.
sure.
Otherwise, snow emergency information, it's going out in the utility billing as we do every year, and it's also being posted on the website and Facebook page. So nothing new there. City can post a snow emergency up to 4 p.m. and that then activates it from midnight to 7 a.m. And all the normal conduits as far as providing the information, the telephone number, the radio station, local media pages, leader website and such. We do have the Everbridge service still in place, and that you can sign up for that on the city's website as usual. And other than that, hopefully we don't have to use it, and we've been trying to use it as sparingly as possible in recent years. We haven't utilized this much at all. John's been trying to stagger or anticipate the snow events and get out there as much as possible beforehand, so we don't have to necessarily utilize this mechanism unless we absolutely have to.
I think that's an important thing, because I think some people come from other communities where anytime there's a certain amount of snow, they can't park on,
Exactly.
on the roads. And we at least give a warning out, and so sometimes I think that causes confusion, because it might snow on a Sunday night into 7 in the morning. We might declare it that afternoon at 4, while people think we're done, and so, but I will say that our Facebook numbers jump every time I know last year, I think the one to declare it, so we use that to get the information out too, so hopefully that's helpful for people, so.
Seems like people have been pretty good too. It just seems like they're getting off, not all the time.
Yeah.
There's areas that-
I hate to simplify it too much, but if it snows a fair amount, don't park your car on the street overnight, and that's kind of what
Pretty easy.
it boils down to, Anyways, that's it.
Ken, the corner of 7 and 15 there on Cobblestone, there's always water coming out of that corner? Is that just coming out of the hill, or?
It's coming out of the hill, yes, and it's finding a utility trench now. Obviously, it's coming up right by that hydrant, so it's finding the old trench where the hydrant was put in years ago, so that the flow of that water, it's always been there, but it's changed a little bit due to what Cobblestone, the hotel construction, did to the lay of the land there.
So where is that?
We're gonna put more tile in, is what it boils down to. So, they put a tile in basically on the foundation of outside the foundation of their retaining wall, and it didn't quite get that far to the west. So, we need to extend that tile next year, and we'll get it into our utility trench there.
What is the
trying to-
source?
Groundwater.
Is it just groundwater?
Yeah, it's perched water, it's just the lay of the land there with that slope, so obviously it's deeper up above the slope and the water's finding its way out of the side of the slope,
Now that it's cooling off, that gets a little slippery on that corner.
Yes, and it's been an issue. There used to be a spot a little further to the east, that's gone away now with what's been built, but this one's become more prevalent, I guess.
And it looked like all the road work was as far as it's gonna get this year.
Yes,
coat or no
we
wear
have
coats
some
and so-
restoration work to be done on Century, striping of the roadway. We weren't able to accomplish that all the way to the east end. Yeah, and then up on the streets on the northeast side, we have the wear course to go down on all those streets, and then trail work to be done and some sidewalk work. there'll be change orders coming here shortly to revise the contract completion dates on both those projects. Nothing we could do with the weather this fall.
Anything else for Kent?
One thing, anything new on roundabout plans for South Grade Road?
Yeah, the consultant's underway, going to be putting together the, well, I'll call it the preliminary design. We're gonna kinda, have a staggered design process. They're gonna do some preliminary design work. We're gonna hopefully get that accomplished shortly after the holidays, and then we're gonna start to have conversations with adjacent property owners. And then I'll gather that information from the property owners and more than likely bring that preliminary design back to council to really let you know where we're at and what we're hearing from adjacent property owners, if there's gonna be any surprises or, negativity or opposition or some other things we need to work through. I want to get that out there right away because I don't want the consultant to go, completely down a path we're not going to arrive at, final design wise.
John and I were at the coalition conference and happened to sit down at a table, and the city administrator from St. James was there. And so we got talking about theirs, and they actually did have an accident problem on that one more downtown where 4 goes over the railroad tracks and stuff at that intersection. They had
Oh, really? Okay.
which now it's really helped address, but a lot of conflicts, potential conflict areas, but I guess it just kind of, and this will, I like the approach that you're taking, I appreciate that. So.
Yeah, I think this will be a good approach and allow us to pump the brakes if need be. And you hit on something just quickly that I've thought about is we don't necessarily have an accident issue there, but there's an issue there, and we've had an expert look at it. That's why I involved the consultant really to vet this and go through the study process in a detailed manner. And I didn't think we'd land at this alternative in the beginning, but the more we talk to people and looking at our configuration there and our issues, it seems like a good fit. Granted, I'll admit it, I'm hearing it from MnDOT staff as we look at how this ties back to the Highway 15 intersection. I don't think there's any issue there, but from their standpoint, they think, well, if you don't have an accident history there, why are you doing this? Well, on the other hand, we got a situation there that is less than ideal, and I believe it could be better.
Don't they have an accident
Yeah.
at their intersection?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, most of them that they address, but not on the other hand, not necessarily. They do improvements where there isn't an accident history either. But yeah, it's kind of traffic engineering philosophy. How proactive are you going to be? It's back to the Hawk system. In that situation, you want to be proactive. You don't want to be reactive.
Just take them out there and tell them to make a left-hand turn coming out of Cash
Without going to the rear of the building.
There you go, yep.
On the private road.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Kent.
Yep.
Thanks, Kent. Mr. Sabora?
I don't have anything else tonight.
John?
Well, I guess Steve, we went to the conference. I think maybe the biggest thing Steve brought up was just about funding for the wastewater treatment plant, what upgrades are we going to have to do. And so the coalition has adopted their legislative, their lobbying policies, and one of them is, about, we're paying off this bond on our wastewater treatment plant and stuff, and are we going to have to stick another $5 million into it to meet phosphorus standards and stuff. So something to pay attention to down at the Capitol.
That's this bill that new projects from being taken on for a community that gets a new project, they're given a 16-year grace period. And I said, well, what about retroactive, like our situation. And so they did adopt that as part of their policy. They said as from some of the chairs on the committees, they're not so sure if you go anywhere, but.
Just like flushable wipes, it's part of the policy thing, but.
I understand the issues.
Kimberly Clark is a pretty powerful lobbyist at the state capitol, so
Anything else, John?
that's it.
Steve?
Just one other thing from the conference, they did provide a draft or a resolution, so, get that. Session starts, I think, January 7th. Talk about wine in grocery stores, that issue. And again, one of their policies is that, current rights of municipalities would not be affected. And then childcare, workforce housing, that got talked about again too. So, but that made me think, last year we developed our city legislative priorities, so maybe we should start.
Yeah, I've actually already started with staff. I think I sent you guys an email, maybe I didn't, but yeah, I want to start pulling that together, and I want to try to, I know we talked about last year trying to have our legislators come and meet with us here, and so as we get towards either the start of the session, although sometimes there's a couple weekends in that first part of the year where they're available, but try to get that set up this year.
Yeah, on the childcare side of it, the new city council member from St. Joseph really made the senators and the representatives pay attention to her when she asked questions about why aren't they doing anything about the cost of childcare. So I think she'll be testifying at the Capitol this year.
She was great.
She was very, very good.
That's it.
See, Chad?
I don't have anything to add.
Mary?
I don't have anything either.
Yeah.
Just two things, just a reminder, our truth and taxation hearing is next Tuesday at 6 p.m. It's the best place to come to get the ins and outs of our budget, what we're spending our money on.
Except it's not a valuation on your.
Yep, it's not dealing with the valuation on your home, it's dealing with what the city is spending its money on, the taxes, the tax rate, the budget. So I always encourage people to come to that. As I noted, our average attendance is 4 or 5. So, but that's the best meeting of the year where we get into the in-depth details of what we're spending our money on. So that's next Tuesday at 6 p.m. right here.
And we spend $13 million probably.
Yep. So, and then, and I'll talk to both Gary and Steve afterwards, but I did have a brief meeting with the sanctuary people yesterday. So tried to schedule a meeting with them to discuss that situation in more detail.
I saw they had a GoFundMe page up.
Yep, that's part of what our conversation was, but just gotta meet with you too about some days where we can sit down with them, so. That's it.
I did have somebody come and ask me about the fishing thing on South Grade Road. That, there's that, along the bridge there's steps going down. And he said that I don't know. I was gonna go out there and look, and I didn't have time, but it was, he talked about it should be wider or something and cleaned out a little bit. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't get out there.
Steve brought this forward to a few months ago. We went down there with some river rock and kind of replaced there's only so much width there to be had. Yeah, I think it would require a fill operation into a water body, honestly, to do much more than, I think.
Yeah, we did work, was it 2 months ago down there?
Yeah, we placed the river rock and backfilled in and tried to somewhat level what had been knocked away. I don't think washed away. I think it's just the foot traffic is knocking the rock away, which is understandable. But I think we got to have certain expectations of what's intended there. I think the steps kind of, I think, get people a mindset that, all right, I can walk down these nice concrete steps down the slope. That's, you know, relatively easy to do, but once you get to the bottom of it, you're walking on loose rock and boulders, and it's uneven, and it's not necessarily that wide, and I don't know if that, honestly, what much more we can do about that.
How about the brush? Is there brush down there that could get,
Cleaned out or something.
or can people
I don't
work-
know if that'd improve the walkability of it, though. Yeah, but I think the walking kind of area is beaten down pretty well and pretty well established. When I was down there, after with staff, we
Yeah.
looked at it and got an idea what could be accomplished. And
Well,
yeah, I hear ya.
We gotta keep in mind it's all elderly people that,
Yeah.
that are, talking about it, and I understand that, there's only so much you can do without,
Yeah.
But
No,
Nicole might
I
bring it
hear you
up,
out,
so.
Mayor, but I think we got to keep in mind the expectations, because short of talking to the DNR and building a concrete sidewalk down there and trying to accomplish that, I don't know much what else we can do. And I would stress, it's better than it was pre-New Bridge.
Yeah.
So we tried to do something to improve the access, but yeah, there's only so much that can be done.
No, I just
We'll-
told them
we'll
I'd
take a
bring
look at it.
Yeah, take a look at it again. Like I said, I understand the expectations of, like you said, there are nice sidewalk, or steps going
Steps.
down, and they think that it's gonna be all paved out there.
Exactly, and I understand. Then you get to the bottom and it's loose rock and rocks you're
Right.
walking on and
Yeah.
trying to wiggle through. Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise, that's all I have, so adjournment's in order.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Chad, second by Mary to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.